Grant Sheridan was eating dinner alone when the television stopped him cold. A woman stood on a frozen sidewalk in Philadelphia. Two children clung to her coat. Everything she owned was piled on the concrete behind her, like debris after a storm. She had just been evicted. It wasn't her tears that froze him. It wasn't the children shivering in the February wind. It was the address on the screen. Because that building belonged to him. 42 years old. Owner of 14,000 rental units across 6 cities. A portfolio worth $2.6 billion. And in 20 years of building an empire, Grant Sheridan had never once walked the hallway of a property he owned. Never met a tenant. Never asked if the heat worked. That was about to change. Because the woman on his screen, Renee Carter, had called his management company 11 times. 11 calls. Not one returned. And what Grant was about to discover behind that door wouldn't just break his heart. It would force him to ask a question he'd spent 20 years avoiding. Was he the landlord? Or was he the man who took everything from her? Grant Sheridan's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower on Lakeshore Drive. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped every room, framing a view of Lake Michigan so wide it looked like the edge of the world. The kitchen had Italian marble that had never once seen a home-cooked meal. The wine cellar held 230 bottles, each chosen by a sommelier Grant had met exactly once. The dining table sat 14. In 4 years of living there, not a single chair had ever been filled. He was the CEO of Sheridan and Ashford Properties. 6 major cities. 14,000 rental units. A portfolio worth $2.6 billion. His name appeared on Forbes lists. His signature appeared on contracts that decided where thousands of families would live, and under what conditions they'd be removed. But Grant had never walked the hallway of a single building he owned. Every property was run by third-party management firms. Professional. Efficient. Distant. Grant reviewed quarterly numbers, occupancy rates, revenue per unit, operating margins. Tenants weren't people in his world. They were line items that either performed or didn't. If they can't pay, they made bad choices. That's not my problem to solve. He'd said it to his board, to his executives, to himself. Late at night, when the penthouse felt too large and too quiet, he said it because his father had said it first. Harlan Sheridan built the company from a single building on the south side of Chicago. 12 units became 1,200. 1,200 became 3,000, all before Grant finished college. Harlan didn't believe in sentiment. He believed in leases. Grant was 14, the day his father took him to a building on a side street in January. Cold enough that breath turned to smoke. They walked past a hallway that smelled like mildew. 2 up a staircase where the railing wobbled under Grant's hand. On the 2nd floor, a family was being moved out. A woman stood in the doorway holding a toddler on her hip. 2 older kids sat on garbage bags stuffed with clothes. "Can't we help them?" Grant had asked. His father didn't slow down. He put a hand on Grant's shoulder and kept walking. "You feel sorry. Good. That means you're human. Now learn to stop. Pity doesn't pay mortgages." She didn't pay rent. That's the end of the story. That moment didn't haunt Grant. That was the problem. He let it teach him exactly what his father intended. Stop feeling. Start counting. And never let anyone tell you the walls you build are wrong. After Harlan died 7 years ago, Grant didn't grieve by slowing down. He grieved by accelerating. He doubled the portfolio in 3 years, then doubled it again. He automated everything: rent collection, late fees, eviction filings, until every decision ran through policy instead of people. He'd signed the contract with Meridian Property Group for his Philadelphia buildings without ever visiting one of them. 47 buildings, over 800 units. He never asked how they handled late payments. He never needed to. The margins were healthy. That was the only language he'd been taught to speak. That February evening, he ate dinner alone. Grilled salmon, a glass of wine that cost $90 a bottle, The television played in the background the same way the dining table existed, to fill space that would otherwise remind him how empty the room really was. His phone buzzed with board meeting notes. He scrolled with one hand, ate with the other. Routine. Mechanical. Insulated. Then the image on the screen shifted. A street. Vinta. Philadelphia. A woman stood on the curb in a thin gray jacket. No gloves. In weather that demanded them. Behind her, a mattress against a fire hydrant. Garbage bags, splitting at the seams. A laundry basket tipped on its side. 2 children sat on the pile. A girl. Maybe 9. Arms wrapped around her knees. A boy. Maybe 5. Sitting on a trash bag like it was a chair. His eyes too calm for what was happening around him. Renee Carter, a 34-year-old certified nursing assistant, was evicted from her apartment this morning after falling 2 months behind on rent. Carter says she contacted her property management company 11 times, requesting an extension. None of her calls were returned. Grant set down his fork. The camera panned to the building behind her. 5 stories. Brick. Fire escapes. A number above the entrance. He didn't blink. This building is part of the Sheridan and Ashford portfolio, owned by billionaire developer Grant Sheridan. The fork hit the plate. The sound rang through the penthouse like a bell in an empty church. Grant stood up. His legs moved before his brain gave permission. Grant opened his laptop. Hands still unsteady. He typed the address into the property database. The screen loaded. Unit 312. Tenant Renee Carter. Lease start March 2019. Monthly. Rent $1,150. Payment history scrolled down like a heartbeat monitor. Green. 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 58 months. Paid on time. Every single one. Then November. Red. December. Red. Eviction filed. Eviction executed. From missed payment to homeless, 6 weeks. 6 weeks to erase nearly 5 years of proof that she was worth keeping. His building, his tenant, his system, his fault. He turned back to the television. But he wasn't listening to the reporter anymore. He was watching the children, the girl Maya. The reporter had called her, stood beside her mother with a backpack still strapped to her shoulders. 9 years old. Old enough to feel the shame of it, and too proud to let it show. The boy, Elias, 5 years old, sat on that garbage bag with his legs dangling, looking up at his mother with a question the microphone barely caught. "Mama, are we camping?" Something in Grant's chest cracked open. A 5-year-old boy sitting on the wreckage of his home, asking if it was an adventure because that's what children do. They translate destruction into something small enough to survive. And his mother had let him believe it, had swallowed her own terror so completely that the worst day of her life looked to her son like camping. The reporter kept talking, and the details piled up like evidence at a trial. Renee Carter had worked the night shift at a community hospital in North Philadelphia for 5 years. 12-hour shifts, waking at 4 in the afternoon, feeding her children, walking into a building full of suffering until sunrise. She'd been laid off when the hospital cut its nursing staff during a budget shortfall. After that, she'd applied to 47 positions in 4 months. 47. 3 interviews. No offers. The reason was always the same. Spoken or unspoken. She needed flexible hours because she had 2 children and no childcare. And needing flexibility, as a single mother, wasn't treated as a circumstance. It was treated as a disqualification. She'd paid rent on time for 4 years and 10 months. 58 consecutive payments. Then her savings ran dry. She called Meridian once, twice, 11 times total. She left voicemails. She sent emails. She sat in their lobby for 2 hours waiting to speak to anyone. Nobody called back. Nobody offered a payment plan. A grace period. or even the dignity of a conversation. The system didn't have a button for compassion. It only had a button for eviction. And somebody pressed it. Across the country, more than 3.6 million eviction cases are filed every single year. Most tenants never see a lawyer. Many don't understand what's happening to them until someone's knocking on their door with a court order. For companies managing thousands of units, eviction isn't always a last resort. Sometimes, it's simply the fastest way to reset a unit at a higher price. And the people who own the buildings almost never see it happening. Because the whole system is built, so they don't have to. The segment ended. The anchor moved on to weather. Grant reached for the remote and pressed the power button. The screen went black, but the image didn't disappear. It burned behind his eyes, a woman standing in the cold. A girl gripping her backpack. A boy asking if they were camping. And an address that belonged to him. He stood in his penthouse. 3 floors. A view of Lake Michigan. 230 bottles of wine. A table built for 14. With 1 chair ever pulled out. And somewhere in Philadelphia, a woman who had done everything right was about to spend the night on a gym mat. Because his system had decided that 2 missed payments erased 5 years of proof that she belonged. He picked up his phone. Not to call his lawyer. Not his publicist. He called his driver. Get the car ready. First flight to Philadelphia tomorrow morning. Then he stood at the window, staring at the black water. And for the first time in 20 years, the silence in his penthouse didn't feel like peace. It felt like evidence. The flight landed at Philadelphia International just before 8 the next morning. Grant had slept, maybe 90 minutes, replaying a boy on a garbage bag asking if they were camping. He had the driver stop 2 blocks from the building. He wanted to walk. He needed to feel the distance between his world and the one he'd been profiting from. The neighborhood announced itself gradually. Shorter buildings, rougher sidewalks, a bodega with half its neon sign burned out. Grant walked through it in a cashmere coat that cost $1,200 and shoes that had never touched anything rougher than polished marble. He looked like a man who'd taken a very wrong turn. In a way, hey hot. 20 years ago, the building came into view, 5 stories. Red brick, gone gray from decades of exhaust. 2 windows on the 3rd floor were patched with cardboard and tape. The front door was propped open with a cinder block. Because the lock had been broken so long, nobody bothered reporting it anymore. Grant stood on the sidewalk and stared at a building that generated over $400,000 a year in rental income. A building he had never once visited. Inside, the hallway wasn't dim. It was dark. 3 of 4 overhead lights were dead. The floor was peeling at the edges. Water stains spread across the ceiling like bruises. The elevator had an out-of-order sign. Yellowed with age, Grant took the stairs. A roach crossed his path without hurrying. Nothing in this building was afraid of its owner. Because nobody here even knew who he was, he knocked on the 2nd door he came to. A chain rattled. An elderly woman peered through the gap's sharp eyes. Silver hair pulled back tight. Can I help you? Not friendly. Not hostile. Careful. My name is Grant, he said, leaving off the last name. I'm looking into conditions in this building. She studied him a long moment, then opened the door wider. Come in. Then, I've got plenty to show you. Her name was Loretta Simmons, 71 years old. 12 years in Unit 204. She counted things days without heat, weeks without maintenance, months since anyone from management had returned a call. Heat's been broken 3 weeks, she said, leading him past a space heater humming in the corner. In February, I called Meridian 6 times. You know what they told me? They'd send someone. Nobody came. Did you know Renee Carter? Grant asked. Unit 312. Loretta's face softened and hardened at once. That girl worked harder than anyone in this building. Always checked on me at 6 in the morning, right after her shift, just to make sure I was still breathing. She paused. She didn't deserve what they did to her. None of us do. We pay our rent. We keep our heads down. And they treat us like the building matters more than the people in it. Grant left her apartment and pressed his back against the cold plaster wall in the hallway. Somewhere above him, a pipe clanked. Somewhere below, a child laughed. 14,000 units. $2.6 billion. And this was what it looked like from the inside. He drove straight to Meridian's regional office. No appointment. He asked the receptionist for the regional manager. Neil Bishop came out 7 minutes later. Thinning hair. A customer service smile that vanished when he realized who was standing in his lobby. "Show me the eviction process," Grant said. "Start to finish." Neil pulled it up like a sales pitch. Grace period through the 5th. Late fee on day 6, $75 a day. Grant did the math. A tenant who missed 1 month's rent would owe over $2,000 in fees within 30 days alone. "Is there any step between the late fee and the filing?" Grant asked. "Any outreach, any call." Neil hesitated. "We send automated notices. If the tenant calls back, another pause. We manage over 800 units in this region." "Mr. Sheridan, we can't make individual exceptions without compromising efficiency. Pull up Renee Carter's file," Grant said. Neil read it off the screen like a parking ticket. Non-payment. November. December. Eviction filed. Executed. Standard protocol. "She called your office 11 times," Grant said. Voice flat. "Nobody called her back. Not once. We follow the protocols in the management contract," Neil said carefully. "The same contract your team signed." There it was. The sentence Grant had been circling since the night before. The contract your team approved. The system he had paid for. The system he had never once looked inside until it put a mother and 2 children on a frozen sidewalk. Grant sat in the back of the sedan for 10 minutes before he spoke. "Is there a shelter nearby? A church? Anything with beds?" The driver found one in 30 seconds, an emergency family shelter running well past capacity. Grant told him to take him there. Then he did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He took off his overcoat, folded it, left it on the seat, where he was going. Armor was the wrong thing to wear. The shelter was in a church basement. Fluorescent lights, folding tables, cots lined up like a field hospital. The air smelled like instant coffee and industrial cleaner. Children sat on the floor, coloring with broken crayons. It didn't take long to find her. Renee Carter sat in the far corner. Not on a cot on the floor. Her back against cinder block. Maya släpp sig det här. Curled under a thin blanket. Her backpack tucked beneath her head like a pillow. Elias slept too, his head on his mother's thigh. Small fingers wrapped around a jacket zipper. Renee wasn't sleeping. She was writing a pen in one hand. A crumpled job application on her knee. Because she didn't have a computer. Because she didn't have a library card anymore. Because when you lose your address, you lose access to almost everything that requires one. She looked up before Grant got within 10 feet. Her eyes assessed him the way you'd assess a threat. "Can I help you?" Not a question. A boundary. "My name is Grant," he said. The last name stayed in his throat. "I saw what happened to you on the news. I wanted to see if there's anything I could do. I don't need your pity," she said. Steady. Not angry. "I need a job. I need a door that locks. I need my kids to stop sleeping on gym mats. Can you do any of that?" Grant opened his mouth. Closed it. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him without calculation. "I might be able to help with some of that," he said carefully. "If you'll let me." Renee studied him, his shoes, his watch, his hands, the way he read balance sheets. Quickly, without sentiment, "Everybody wants to help," she said. "Nobody wants to fix anything. People hand you a sandwich and feel like heroes. Nobody asks how the system broke me. They just want the version where they showed up and made it better. That landed somewhere deep, not in his pride. In his guilt. Because she'd just described exactly what he'd walked in planning to do. "You're right," he said. "I'm not here to hand you a sandwich." "Then what are you here for?" He didn't have a clean answer. So he told the only truth available. "I'm here because I saw your son ask if you were camping. And I haven't been able to close my eyes since." Something shifted in her face, not trust, but the faintest crack in the wall, the acknowledgement that a stranger had seen the one moment she'd tried hardest to hide. She didn't invite him to sit. She went back to writing. He came back 3 more times that week. Groceries. A coat for Elias. New shoes for Maya, whose old ones had a hole she'd been stuffing with napkins. He didn't announce himself. He just showed up. Left things. Sat with the kids while Renee filled out applications. Maya warmed to him first, showing him her drawings, butterflies. And houses. Always houses. A square with a triangle roof and a door with a handle. Drawn over and over by a girl who no longer had one. Elias was sheer, but on the 3rd visit, he climbed onto the bench beside Grant and handed him a broken blue crayon. "You can have this one. Blue is for the sky." Grant's hand shook, taking it. He couldn't explain why a 5-year-old's crayon felt heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. Renee watched all of it with careful eyes. She was beginning to trust him the way you trust a bridge that looks sturdy enough for one more crossing. Then, one afternoon, the television in the common room was tuned to a business channel. A name on the screen: Sheridan and Ashford Properties. A face she recognized. She stared. The cold that moved through her wasn't the cold of winter. It was the cold of betrayal, the kind that starts in your stomach and spreads until every word you've said to someone replays with a new, sickening meaning. When Grant walked in that evening with groceries and a book for Elias, Renee was standing by the entrance, arms crossed. Still, in a way that didn't mean calm. "You're him," she said. "You own that building." He set the bag down slowly. "Yes, you're the reason my kids are sleeping on gym mats. You, not some company. You." Grant didn't step back, didn't reach for an excuse. "Yes, I own the building," he said. "I didn't know what was happening inside it." He paused. "But that's not an excuse. That's the problem. You wanted to be the savior of your own guilt." Renee said quietly, "I've seen men like you my whole life. You break something, then show up with flowers." "Maybe," he said. "Maybe that's exactly what I did. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until I fix what I broke. Not because it makes me good, because it makes me responsible." Renee turned and walked away without another word, back to the corner where Maya and Elias slept. But Maya had been watching, 9-year-old eyes that had seen too much. Her question crossed the room and landed on Grant's chest like a fist. "Are you the man who took our home?" Grant's throat closed. He had no answer for her. Not yet. Grant drove to his hotel that night and didn't move for a long time. Then he opened his laptop, not for email, not for reports. He logged into the company's master system and pulled data he'd never once looked at in 20 years of ownership. Eviction filings, all properties, all cities, last 12 months. The number loaded, 847. 847 families evicted from Sheridan and Ashford Properties in a single year. He clicked deeper. 63% were single-parent households. More than 6 out of 10. Mothers and fathers raising children alone. And his system had put them on the street. He kept going. 41% were evicted within 60 days of their first late payment. The same timeline as Renee. Average tenancy. Before that, missed payment, 3.2 years. These weren't people who moved in and stopped paying. These were people who'd lived in his buildings for years. Paid faithfully. And hit one bad stretch. The system refused to forgive. His father's voice rose from the shelf where it always lived. The numbers work. Son. That's all that matters. Grant said the number out loud in the empty hotel room. And it sounded different this time. Harder. Clearer. The numbers worked for me. They destroyed everyone else. He picked up his phone. 2 a.m. He called his chief operating officer, Denise Okafor. In Chicago. She answered groggy. Confused. Freeze every eviction in the portfolio. Grant said, effective immediately. Silence. Then her voice, suddenly awake. Grant. That's 14,000 units across 6 cities. Do you understand the legal exposure? I said. Freeze them. All of them. No new filings. Nothing moves until I've personally reviewed how we got here. The board is going to. The board answers to me. Not one more family gets put on the street by this company until I say so. Is that clear? A pause. Crystal. He hung up. Sat in the dark. Somewhere in the city. Renee Carter was lying on a gym mat. Her children pressed against her sides, wondering whether the man who'd taken her home was also the man trying to give it back. The pushback came fast. His legal team objected. His CFO sent a memo outlining the financial risk of freezing an entire revenue stream overnight. 2 board members requested an emergency call, demanding to know why the company was suddenly bleeding money. It didn't need to bleed. Grant sat through the call and let them talk. Then he read them one line from Renee Carter's tenant file. 58 months of on-time payments. 11 unanswered phone calls. 6 weeks from stable to homeless. That's the file. He said, that's what our efficiency actually costs. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what's changing. One board member threatened to raise it at the next shareholder meeting. Grant told him to go ahead. He chose the tenant file over the memo, in place of the old management contract. Grant built something new, an in-house division with a single rule that overrode every other policy in the handbook. Before any eviction filing could move forward, 3 conditions had to be met. First, a minimum of 3 in-person contact attempts, not automated texts. A human being, knocking on a door, asking what happened. Second, a free financial counseling session offered to every tenant who fell behind. Not mandatory. Available. Third, a 30-day review period where a tenant advocate, someone whose only job was to represent the renter, would assess whether the situation was temporary or permanent. 3 steps. That's all it took. 3 steps the old system had never taken. Because 3 steps cost time, and time cost money. And money was the only language it had ever spoken. Grant hired an advocate for every building in the portfolio. He created an emergency hardship fund. Any tenant who could show sudden income loss could apply for a 90-day grace period. No late fees. No penalties. Just time. Because what Renee's 11 unanswered calls had taught him was that most people who fall behind don't need charity. They need time. 6 months later, the numbers came in. Eviction filings across the portfolio had dropped 78%. Tenant retention was up 34%. Revenue dipped 3% in the short term, but turnover costs, legal fees, and vacancy losses had fallen 41%. Grant sat in his office looking at the report. Numbers. The same language he'd spoken his whole career. But for the first time, they told a story he was proud of. 3 days passed before Renee called. Grant had gone back to the shelter twice. Both times, she refused to see him. He didn't push. He left an envelope with a volunteer and asked that it be given to her when she was ready. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apology. No speech. Just information. A 2-bedroom apartment. Unit 409. Same building. Fully renovated new heating system. New locks. New paint. Furnished with basic essentials. Rent-free for 6 months. After that, a graduated payment plan based on income. Never more than 30% of whatever she earned. No late fees. No penalties. No meridian. Below the apartment details was a second section, a job placement program at a hospital across the city. Nursing assistant positions available, flexible scheduling for parents, on-site childcare subsidy, an interview already arranged, if she wanted it. At the bottom, one handwritten line, "This isn't charity. This is what was owed." Renee called on a Tuesday evening. Grant answered before the first ring finished. "I'm doing this for Maya and Elias," she said. No greeting. Her voice flat. "Deliberate. Not for you. Not because I forgive you. Not because I believe you. My daughter is hiding crackers in her backpack. My son doesn't know what a bed feels like anymore. That's the only reason." "I know," Grant said, "and I wouldn't trust you if you forgave me this easily." A long silence. Then, quieter. "When can we see it tomorrow?" "Whenever you're ready." The renovation had taken 72 hours. Grant brought in a crew of 12, new drywall where the plaster had crumbled, a heating unit that actually worked, windows that sealed properly, a kitchen faucet that didn't drip, new locks on every door, deadbolt and chain, because when you've lost your home once, the first thing you need isn't furniture. It's the sound of a lock clicking shut behind you. The apartment wasn't luxury. Laminate counters, basic carpet, a couch from a warehouse store, a kitchen table with 4 chairs. But it was clean. It was warm. It was safe. Maya walked in first, moving through it slowly, touching everything, the walls, the light switches, the refrigerator door. Opened and closed 3 times. Then she found the smaller bedroom and stopped. A twin bed with a purple comforter, a small desk with a lamp, a bookshelf. Empty, waiting to be filled. "Mama," she said. "Is this my room?" "Yes." "Baby, just yours." Maya sat on the bed and pressed her hand flat against the comforter. Then she lay back and stared at the ceiling like she was memorizing it, like she needed proof it would still be there when she closed her eyes. Elias ran in a minute later, found the second bedroom, a small bed with a blue blanket, a bin of building blocks in the corner. He bounced on the mattress once, twice, then looked up at his mother. "Mama, is this our home for real? Or are we just visiting Grant?" Standing in the hallway, heard the question and had to turn away. A 5-year-old boy who had lost the concept of home so completely he couldn't tell the difference between living somewhere and passing through. Renee knelt down and held his face in both hands. "This is our home. Baby. For real. We're staying." Elias searched her face the way children do, not with logic. "But instinct." Then he nodded slowly, like he wanted to believe her, but wasn't quite ready to let go of the caution that had kept him safe. Renee walked to the living room window and looked out at the small playground behind the building. Rusted swings, a basketball hoop with no net. Nothing fancy, but outside, in the air, with sunlight. She didn't cry. She just stood there and breathed slowly, like someone remembering how to fill their lungs without calculating whether they could afford to exhale. For the first time in 4 months, Renee Carter took a breath that didn't carry the weight of tomorrow. Renee started her new job on a Monday in March. Night shift. Same hours she'd worked for 5 years before. Same scrubs. Same sore feet by 3 in the morning. But everything else was different. This time, when she left for work, Maya and Elias were enrolled in an after-school program, structured and supervised, funded quietly through a foundation Grant had set up for working parents in his buildings. This time, when Renee came home at 8:30 in the morning, she didn't collapse onto a bare floor. She walked into an apartment that was hers, a door that locked, heat that worked. She didn't celebrate. She went to work. That's what Renee Carter did. Within 2 months, her supervisor had moved her to a permanent position, noting her patient scores were among the highest on the floor. Not because she was trying to impress anyone, because she knew exactly what it felt like to call for help and have no one answer. Then she enrolled in a nursing certification program. Online classes. Tuition partially covered by a grant. The rest pulled from a paycheck that didn't have room for it. She studied after the kids went to sleep. 11 at night until 1 in the morning. Textbooks open on the kitchen table. One morning, Grant found a sticky note taped above her study space. Pink paper. Crayon handwriting. Crooked letters. "You can do it. Mama. I love you. Maya." Grant visited once a month after that, not announced. Not formal. Books for Maya, who was devouring everything she could find about the ocean. Building blocks for Elias, who decided he wanted to be an architect, though he still pronounced it architect, with the stress in the wrong place. And for Renee, he brought the only thing that mattered: consistency. He showed up. He didn't disappear. He didn't move on to the next headline or the next version of guilt relief. One evening, 7 months after she'd moved back in, they sat at her kitchen table while Maya read on the couch, and Elias slept down the hall. Renee poured coffee into mismatched mugs and looked at Grant for a long time before speaking. "I still don't fully forgive you," she said. "Maybe I never will. What your company did, it changed my kids. Maya still hides food sometimes. Elias still asks me every morning if we're staying. That doesn't go away because the heat works now." Grant nodded. He didn't argue. "But I respect that you stayed," she said. "Most people who feel guilty just write a check and disappear. You stayed. That counts for something. Not everything. Something." Grant looked at the sticky note still taped to the wall, Maya's crooked handwriting. A child's love spelled out in crayon. None of the art in his father's penthouse, worth millions, had ever said anything as true as that. "Thank you," he said. And he meant it more than he'd ever meant those words in his life. Not for forgiveness, she hadn't given him that. For letting him stay. The first call Grant made when he got back to Chicago was to Meridian Property Group's corporate office. Not to renegotiate. To terminate. Every property. Every city. Every contract. His legal team pushed back. His CFO sent a memo outlining the risk of severing ties with the largest management firm in the portfolio. Grant read it. Then he read Renee's tenant file again. 58 months of on-time payments. 11 unanswered calls. 6 weeks from stable to homeless. He shows the tenant file. In Meridian's place. Grant built what he started calling, almost by accident at first, the Second Door Initiative, a name Maya had actually given it, without meaning to. The day she asked him if broken things could ever get a second door instead of just a second chance. It stuck. Every building got a dedicated tenant advocate, someone whose only job was to stand between management and the people living inside the walls. Listen. Translate. Protect the human, not the asset. The emergency hardship fund Grant had built during the freeze became permanent, 90 days of grace for anyone who could show a layoff letter. A medical bill. A sudden loss. No penalties. Just time. Grant couldn't rewrite national housing policy. He knew that. One portfolio couldn't undo decades of policy failure, and a market built to extract maximum profit from people with minimum options. In a handful of cities, pilot programs already guaranteed tenants free legal counsel in eviction court, and in those cities, eviction rates had dropped by as much as 70%. Not because tenants suddenly had more money, but because when someone actually looked at the case, most evictions fell apart. They'd never been about justice. They'd been about speed. Grant couldn't change the country, but he could change 14,000 doors. 6 months after the overhaul, the full numbers came in. Eviction filings down 78% across the entire portfolio. Tenant retention up 34%. Revenue had dipped 3% in the short term, but turnover costs, legal fees, and vacancy losses had dropped 41%. Grant sat in his Chicago office with the quarterly report open in front of him. Numbers. The same language he'd spoken his entire career, but for the first time, they weren't just proof of profit. They were proof that his father had been wrong, not just morally, mathematically. Compassion, it turned out, wasn't a luxury landlords couldn't afford. It was the thing they'd been underpricing all along. 18 months after that February night, Grant Sheridan stood at a podium inside a building he barely recognized. Same address, same brick, same 5 stories. But everything else had changed. The front door had a working lock. The hallway lights stayed on. The walls had been replastered and painted a warm gray that made the space feel lived in, not just survived in. The elevator worked. A ground-floor storage closet that used to collect mildew and broken furniture was now a community room folding chairs. A small stage. Windows that actually let in daylight. The room was full. Tenants from the building. Social workers. Legal aid attorneys. Reporters from 2 local stations. City council members who had suddenly discovered a deep interest in tenant protections now that a billionaire was funding them. Grant had announced the launch of the Second Door Initiative, a foundation built around 3 things: emergency housing assistance for families facing eviction, free legal representation in housing court, and a training program for tenant advocates. Not charity. Infrastructure. Not a gift. A correction. Renee sat in the front row in a simple navy dress, bought with her own paycheck. Her nursing certificate was 3 weeks old. She'd passed on her first attempt. Maya sat beside her in a yellow dress, her hair braided, holding her mother's hand with the quiet confidence of a kid who'd finally stopped waiting for the floor to disappear. Elias sat on the other side, holding a crayon drawing a 5-story building. Square windows, a door with a handle, and above it, a sun with rays stretching to every corner of the page. Grant spoke without notes. "I stood in this hallway a year and a half ago," he said, "and I didn't recognize my own building. Not because it had changed, because I'd never bothered to look. I owned it for 7 years and never once walked through the front door. Never asked if the heat worked. Never asked if anyone here was safe." The room stayed silent. Renee Carter forced me to see what I'd chosen to ignore. She didn't ask for my help. She didn't want my pity. She wanted a door that locked, and a system that didn't throw her children onto a sidewalk because she missed 2 months of rent after 5 years of paying on time. That's not a lot to ask. The fact that my company couldn't give her that is something I'll carry for the rest of my life. He announced the advisory board community members, housing attorneys, 1 tenant representative, Renee Carter. She walked to the podium with no prepared remarks. "I'm not here because I'm special," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here because 3.6 million families go through what I went through. Every single year. I'm just the one who ended up on TV." She looked at Grant, then at Maya, then back at the room. Nobody should lose their home because they lost their job for 2 months. Nobody. If this foundation means one mother doesn't have to explain to her 5-year-old why they're sleeping in a church basement, it's worth everything. She stepped down. No applause line. Just walked back and took her daughter's hand. After the reporters left and the council members disappeared into black cars, the tenants lingered, talking to advocates, asking questions about the legal aid program. Grant stood near the entrance, watching the room empty. Maya appeared at his side, tugging his sleeve the way she always did. Gently, like she was asking permission to exist in his space. "Mr. Grant, my mom said you used to own the building that kicked us out." "I did," he said, "but now you're fixing it." "I'm trying." She nodded, thought about it, then looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much and still chose to believe. "Good, because there's a girl in my class who just lost her apartment too. Her name's Brianna. She's staying with her grandma. But the apartment's really small. She paused. "Can you help her?" Grant's throat tightened. Because this was it. Not the foundation. Not the press conference. Not the spreadsheets showing eviction rates cut by 78%. A child. Standing in a hallway. Asking a grown man to help her friend. The simplest, most human version of the question he should have been asking for 20 years. "Tell me about Brianna," Grant said, "and we'll figure it out." The crisis hadn't ended. It hadn't even slowed down. Somewhere in America. Right now, a mother was packing garbage bags. A child was asking a question no child should have to ask. But one man had finally stopped looking away. Months later, Grant sat in the same penthouse, same table, same view of Lake Michigan stretching into darkness. The television was on same channel. Same quiet hour when dinner is done and the world narrows to whatever glows on the screen. But the story was different. A reporter stood outside a building in Philadelphia. The brick had been cleaned. The windows were whole. Behind her, on a small playground, children were playing, actually playing, running and shouting, doing the things children do when they finally feel safe enough to be loud. The segment was on the Second Door Initiative. 6 months in, 214 families assisted, 87 evictions prevented through legal aid alone. Then the camera cut to an interview. A woman in scrubs. Calm. Steady, the kind of calm that only comes from surviving something that should have broken you. And building something better on the other side. Nobody should lose their home because they lost their job for 2 months. Renee Carter said into the camera. Nobody. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed. We just need to redesign it. Grant pressed the remote. The screen went black. But this time, he wasn't looking away from something unbearable. He was smiling. Now, before you go, I want to be honest with you. This story is fictional. Grant and Renee aren't real people. But the crisis is. Every number in this video is documented. Tracked by Princeton's Eviction Lab and the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. 3.6 million eviction filings. Every single year. In this country alone. If you or someone you know is facing eviction, call 211. It connects you to local housing help, legal aid, and emergency rental assistance. You don't have to face it alone. If this story hit you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for the algorithm, for the conversation.